So hopefully the rest goes as planned. Sorry for the delay. We had a real issue with the projector. Here it worked instantly, so it wasn't the guys working with it. It was just the projector messing it up. So again, welcome to my session, Creating Sustainable Solutions with SharePoint 2013. Thanks to our sponsors again. So thank you. For those who do not know me, just a little bit about me. I'm Yuri Burger. I work for a company called Delta N, which is a Microsoft Gold partner in the Netherlands. And besides running the SharePoint business unit, I'm also the SharePoint lead architect for most SharePoint solutions. Certified Master SharePoint 2010 or a Microsoft Certified Solution Master SharePoint Chartered, which is a lot of words. On a more personal note, I live near Rotterdam, proud father of a son, 3-year-old, and I like to travel. If you want to reach me during this conference, just my arm. I will be around, so you can ask me anything. But after the conference, you can reach me on Twitter, email, or connect to me through my blog, where I write about SharePoint in general and application lifecycle management issues surrounding the SharePoint topics. I've got quite a bit of content to get across, so let's get started with our to-do list for this presentation. This presentation is called Creating Sustainable Solutions with SharePoint 2013. So I would like to start to talk a little bit about what I mean with sustainable solutions, and then to move on to the main body of the presentation, which is taken up by what I call developer considerations. I divided those in 3 different areas: solution type, which basically covers the 3 solution types we know: full trust, Sandbox, app. They're still around there, those first 2. Then to move on to solution architecture, where we'll cover some of the current trends in SharePoint solution architecture design. And I'd like to finish up with a little touch on a subject which is called solution lifecycle. It's kind of like application lifecycle, but for SharePoint people. So I like to call it solution lifecycle. I won't go into real detail there, but just hopefully enough to get you interested and to, well, investigate on your own. I do encourage that. So. And if we have time, we can, of course, pop up some questions. So we had to skip the Meet the Master session, so I don't expect you to drop all those questions at me at the end. But if you might, if I can't answer them, I will call for help. So, sustainable solutions. What are sustainable solutions, and why should we care? Creating sustainable solutions is not about creating eco-friendly, low carbon dioxide green solutions. It's actually about maximizing product revenue by making your solutions go a long way. So instead of just solving today's problems or meeting today's requirements, you design and develop from a future's perspective. And a longer product life generally means more product revenue. Creating sustainable solutions should also be business driven. It's not something we as developers made up. Something the business demands. They don't like their efforts of today be lost in the future. And I like to talk about creating sustainable solutions, not just durable solutions. There is a thin line between those two, but I will explain it on my next slide. On the definition of terms, this is my opinion, part Wikipedia, I guess, or I don't know, it's been there up in my slide deck quite a few months. So. This is my opinion. Durability is the ability to resist changes. So it means your solution doesn't degrade too much over time. Sustainability, however, on the other hand, is the ability to embrace changes by renewal, maintenance, and improvements. So instead of blocking you and your customers from moving forward when the environment or the requirements change, you embrace those changes by extending or improving your software. Although you could argue that sustainability requires durable components, I like to separate them. And whether or not the solution is sustainable is largely dependent on us, the SharePoint architects and the SharePoint developers. And on, of course, on our decisions we make along the way. So on that note, we dive into what I call the developer considerations. The next couple of slides are not an architectural blueprint for your next SharePoint project. I hope they aim at helping you and giving you pointers with some of the decisions you as a developer have to make. When starting a new project or reviewing application requirements, I work my way through the solutions design and I make decisions along the way. I like to plot them on what I call the solution chart. It's not even a real thing, I just made it up, but if it was a real thing, it would cover these three areas. Solution type, the basic three, we all know them. I will review them in detail in the next few slides. Solution architecture, which covers some of the trends. And I will end up with solution lifecycle and we'll focus on feedback and quality. And there will be 2 demos, so not all the boring slides, luckily. If the demo gods are with me. The first area on solution chart, solution type. We used to just build full trust solutions back in 2007. But with the introduction of the Sandbox Sandbox model in SharePoint 2010 and the app model in 2013, a very real decision to make nowadays. And it's usually needed at the very start of each project. So what solution types are available to us? Well, we all know this one, the full trust. It's still required if you want to deploy legacy things like timer jobs, application pages, or service apps. Mainly targeted at on-premise intranet. We then have the Sandbox solution type. It's deprecated as of today, but still supported in SharePoint 2013. It's still a viable option, I guess, if you just want to deploy intranet artifacts, things like images, content types, lists, and stuff like that. So, but it's deprecated, should you take that into account, but it's still a good option. And we have the app model. No server-side SharePoint custom code, and we get a bonus, which is the isolation through what Microsoft calls the app web. These are the main characteristics. I will go into more detail on the next few slides. So Victor showed this in his keynote. 2007 brought us full trust. So I'm going to do a little bit of history here. 2010 gave us Sandbox. 3 version years later, SharePoint 2013 gave us apps. Make sure you notice the trend here. It has been pretty obvious since the introduction of SharePoint 2013. Microsoft likes us to work on solutions that doesn't block users from moving to the cloud. So the big question is, however, what is next? My guess is probably apps v2. I think they were going to be around when we get to v next. We're promised one more on-premise version, but I think we might see in a future the deprecation of the full trust solution. That's just my guess, but who knows? Outside the program group, that is. Okay, let's get into details, different solution type. First on the board, full trust solution. It was introduced WSS v3 and thus MOS 2007. Before that, a developer or the administrator guys were responsible for deploying all the artifacts, like the assemblies to the different web front-end GAG or bin directories. The solution framework changed all that. It was designed for on-premise intranet deployments, since at the time there was no real cloud offering. At the time they designed it, was no real cloud offering available for SharePoint. It had one major flaw, of course. Custom code ran with full trust and could potentially bring down entire web servers or even entire farms. So by the time Microsoft started to think about moving to the cloud or hosted SharePoint environments, they had to come up with a solution because it was nearly impossible to deny customers to run anything from the default software. So full trust solution, never really an option for hosted or multi-tenant scenarios. So they're still available today, but could potentially block a customer from moving through the cloud. So you should be careful with those. Next, the Sandbox introduced SharePoint 2010. At the time of the introduction, the next big thing. No more full trust, although full trust proxies were available if you needed to run non-restricted code. You had the full trust proxy on-premise. And according to Microsoft, it was the answer to running custom code safely and opened up the door to hosted and multi-tenant scenarios. It even came with a resource quota system to monitor and govern its usage. Today, unfortunately deprecated, but still available on-premise and in SharePoint Online, all Office 365 plans, so it's still out there. They even built their own solutions on part of the Sandbox, so Design Manager. So, but it's deprecated. Finally, apps. They were the cool feature, the killer app, SharePoint 2013, right? Again, no more full trust. Now, we do see a pattern here. I don't think we're going to be allowed to run full trust code ever again when a new framework is released by Microsoft. It essentially replaces the Sandbox as the preferred solution type. It targets on-premise, online, and hybrid environments, all from a potentially single code base. So what's the status today? Well, it's V1, so not perfect by far. I do expect, however, that they stick around for V next, so they might improve. But who knows? We still remember the Sandbox, but I don't think they're going to deprecate the app model. They do, however, fit the current trend, where we go all wild on JavaScript-based solutions. So where we do most of our app logic on the client. Microsoft also likes to move the load from the cloud to the client, so they fit that. But people need to stretch to find workarounds for the most common scenarios. So we'll look at some of those. And when it comes to apps, we have to look at the different deployment options or type of apps, if you like. So the first one, the easiest one, SharePoint Hosted, means no client-side code, just HTML, CSS, JavaScript. There is, however, one quirky way to use some server-side execution by using JSON and extending your workflow, building your workflow on the SharePoint workflow features of your host. It's quirky, but it kind of works in a way. Data is typically stored in SharePoint lists and libraries and is available through REST, for instance, internally, externally. Second one, provide hosted. Well, you host your app logic on Windows, Azure, IIS, ASP.NET, or any other technology you would like, Ruby on Rails or stuff like that. You call back into your SharePoint environment using the client object model or REST, and data is typically stored in SQL Azure, but you could find any other web data storage formats for you to work with. And finally, we have auto-hosted. It's the option that's available for SharePoint Online, and you get an instance of Windows Azure. I call this Windows Azure Lite because you don't get any management interface to it, but it will do it like that. Again, you call back into your SharePoint environment using client object model or REST, and data is stored in SQL Azure. And when it comes to those different types of apps, make sure you check what's available in Office 365. Luckily, not much diversity here. Full trust solutions, never supported in any of the plans. All app deployment options are available, as is the REST API, and the Sandbox is, of course, also available. So the next few slides are actually where all the previous options come together. It's what I call the solution type decision diagram. So what to build, that's what I call it. It's, again, something I use myself in my day-to-day decisions. What kind of solutions I like to architect or at least start out with. Remember, as with every SharePoint project, your circumstances may vary or differ, or the customer needs may differ, so you have to figure out maybe your own solution diagram. Your minds may vary. But first I would like to walk you through some of the decisions I put into my diagram. So just a couple of more bullets and then we'll head to a larger diagram. First up, do we target SharePoint Online? And in all but a few cases, I mean Office 365 multi-tenant, so not the dedicated one, so it's like the SharePoint Online and the multi-tenant version. And I tend to look a little bit further down the road with this one. So you might have customers asking for on-premise solutions, but if you know they're evaluating or thinking about Office 365, it might be wise to answer yes to this question, because you don't want to create a solution that could potentially block your customer from moving to the cloud. Next is, are we compatible with the app model, or cloud app model, as Microsoft likes to call it. So first we look at the technical component of this, and we see if we can meet the requirements with the app model components, and see if we don't need to deploy legacy stuff like timer jobs and service apps. And even if we do, we could try to separate those legacy bits and try to figure some hybrid solution where we can still fit most of our work in the app model. But we also look at a more concept level, because the app model is pretty much intended for on-demand installation. It's intended for picking an app from the store by an end user and having installed it by him or herself. So, so if you have, for instance, like an intranet branding solution with my site branding and stuff like that, that's maybe then the app model is not the perfect delivery model for your solution, and you should go with something else. But if it's just things like web parts and stuff, the app model might just be your right choice. My bottom line is apps are intended for end users, and full trust and Sandbox solutions are intended for administrators. So that's kind of like the way I like to switch between those. It's V1, so there are caveats with the app model. So I like to ask, do we need anonymous list access? Anonymous access solutions are always daunting, especially if you do public-facing internet solutions on Office 365. Say if you need, for instance, like list access, reading or writing to a list using REST or TSOM. Anonymous access can get ugly in Office 365. This is mainly because in Office 365 not all the anonymous configuration options are available to you. So you have to work around those by maybe using a Sandbox solution for part of your story. So. And finally, do we need to deploy just artifacts like images, lists, and stuff like that? If we don't need to deploy them to the file system, and we hardly ever do, then well, we see in the diagram that maybe a Sandbox is still a viable option. Because if you just want to deploy out, artifacts environment-wide, then why pick an app? You could pick an app, though, to deploy master pages, but it's not always the best solution. Last three. Do we need anything other than HTML, CSS, JavaScript, or local SharePoint list? And bring in external data through REST? In that case, we will see that the SharePoint hosted app might just work for us. Or do we need things like custom workflow or scheduled task-like behavior, timer job-like behavior, like remote app or event receivers? In that case, you will see in the diagram that we'll probably go for provider hosted. And the final one, do we need to sell through the Microsoft Store? This is obviously could be a big one, so you might want to consider this because the store is currently available for SharePoint hosted and provider hosted, not for auto hosted yet. So that might change. Maybe it has changed in the last couple of days. They're working on that. So here's the promised diagram. It's only the first part. There is a second part. It will fly in a couple of slides. And I will just bring in the decisions we talked about in the last couple of slides. So for start, do we target Office 365 or SharePoint Online? This is usually the biggest question. Your answer based on the current requirements. Again, make sure you figure out what the customer really needs. Maybe there is a Office 365 path in the near future. But if it's not, are we compatible with the app model? And we look at both the technical and the concept part of the app model. And if it's not, then we can go with full trust. But if we do target Office 365 or SharePoint Online, we look at the anonymous access part I talked about and with the list access. So if it's an intranet solution only targeted at known users, then you're probably safe to go. But if it's not, then we have the caveat I talked about. You might have to go with the Sandbox solution. But even if we don't need anonymous access in Office 365 and it's an intranet solution or all authenticated use, we still figure out if we're compatible with the app model. In that case, if we're not compatible, Sandbox is your only option since you're in Office 365. Luckily for Microsoft, there are requirements that actually fit the app model, luckily. So in those cases, we can dive right in and look at all the goodness that the apps have to offer. So when we're at apps, the next part of the diagram. So do we need anything like workflow or workflow type behavior, scheduled task, timer jobs like behavior? If we do not, remember no custom SharePoint server-side code. We can go with SharePoint hosted app. If we do, however, have that kind of behavior, we need that kind of behavior, we check again if we're in Office 365. Because if we're not, there's only one option left, which is the provider hosted app. If we do, however, the last thing we have to check is, do we need to sell it through the store? If we're going to sell and license the software ourselves, then we can go with the auto hosted app for now. But if we do need to sell it to the store, we have only one option left. So and this basically concludes my solution type diagram. And while we're here, I would like to show you the one I did for SharePoint 2010. I published it a couple of years ago. Not that much interesting information to keep, although the restrictions regarding the Sandbox still apply as of today. But since they're deprecated, we're moving on. Solution architecture. Okay, second area. area of my solution chart, largely determined by the application requirements and solution type. Nowadays also greatly under the influence of trends. So I will explore some of those, and we also look towards deciding what architecture to use. So trends, this is why I will tell you why I put this slide up there. Because designing solutions has always been under the big influence of trends. So for IT people, this is because their curiosity towards new technologies, new concepts that actually drives us. But for businesses, this is because they're constantly looking for more efficient concepts, like do more with less. So that's why I look at trends. Trends in a way show you the general adoption of those concepts and technologies. So I don't mean to tell you that you should accept just any trend out there, but just be on the lookout, and that's my advice. Compare them with what you think Microsoft has in store for us, and see if you might want to use one of those trends. So what have I put up there? Agile, cloud, mobile, frameworks. So with each of those I will explain what I mean. Agile is basically the business looking for the more efficient concept, do more with less. Agile, cloud, as we all know, Microsoft has a pretty aggressive cloud-first strategy. So they also focus a lot on client-side technologies, HTML, CSS, JavaScript. So you could consider those technologies in your future projects. Mobile devices become a more and more viable delivery platform for your solutions, and I don't mean just the internet-facing solutions, because the whole bring your own device concept really changed this, and you will see people accessing your intranet solutions using numerous devices, numerous viewports. But I'd like to consider you one more thing, and that's frameworks. And what I mean by that is HTML and JavaScript frameworks to create responsive and dynamic HTML output. Very popular in current days development, in and outside the Microsoft product stack. So one of the big reasons for that is the ability of these frameworks to support a responsive design. So why responsive design? Well, for one of the public projects I did, I tried to figure out how many different screen sizes or possible viewports used by my visitors, that were used by my visitors, and I found more than 20, and that number was still rising. So that's a pretty large number. That's why I decided that responsive design might just be a good thing. Mobile internet is catching up on desktop usage, and we'll probably leave it training soon. Yeah, I think so. You will see this even on your intranet solutions, that mobile access will probably increase. And a responsive UI design enables device-dependent user experiences, all from potentially a single HTML and CSS code base. So you just write one HTML code base and you can use it on all your devices. Supporting requirements like responsive design and bring your own device have always been pretty challenging with SharePoint, because you could of course control all your HTML and all your output using control adapters to just avoid the default horrendous mobile view. You might ask why not support multiple devices using SharePoint's own feature, the device channels, but that would actually mean that you would be creating multiple master pages for your solutions, and that's hardly, well, in my opinion, a durable solution and not a sustainable solution. So I would like to go one step beyond. And it would be much more efficient if we could benefit from the efforts that others make, that the others made to create these responsive UIs and tailor them to all the mobile experiences out there. So that's why HTML frameworks entered the arena. I just put two of them up, Bootstrap, Twitter Bootstrap, and Amazium. Another one, Skeleton. I like Amazium a lot because it's very clean. I don't like Bootstrap that much because everybody uses Bootstrap. It's pretty recognizable, rounded corner stuff. And you can change that, of course. But. So what have they have to offer? They offer responsive HTML framework. It allows us to work with flexible web page layout that respond to a laptop, different screen sizes, or adapt to different screen sizes or screen orientation, all from a single code base. So it enables the reuse of HTML and saves on development time, targeting different devices. They're usually based on a grid system containing columns and rows. They use CSS for positioning and for the biggest part, media queries. use to optimize the grid based on your current device resolution and orientation. And they come with a lot of pre-baked CSS classes and media queries for the most common scenarios. So if you have, for instance, a jQuery carousel that you'd like to hide on phones, then these frameworks have simple CSS classes. So you put a container around it, correct CSS class, and it will be hidden. And because they are community-based, they come with a lot of documentation and examples. I have a demo set up, so first I will explain to you the grid system that I like to work with Amazium. Amazium uses a 1200 pixel grid. I did resize my demo because we had issues on the other side and it couldn't use high resolution. So my demo is now, I think, a 960 pixels wide, but it's also supported in Amazium. So it means actually that this layout is initially laid out for a desktop view, but we'll see that if we change to the responsive view, that it actually adapts. Consists of rows, so I have an example grid set up, and it will contain the same grid, and you will see that we have like 6 containers. The first row spanning 2 columns each, and the second one, and so on and so on. So we will see that in a demo. And what we will see is that if we change to a different viewport, that the CSS actually takes care of this, and we should end up with something like that. So for this demo, what did I need to do? What is our goal? I think we want to create a publishing master page with Amazium support. I choose Amazium, but that's our goal. It will not be an end-to-end solution, but we will get a responsive homepage, just to get you started on the subject. What did I have to do, and what I'm going to show is that I started out with the Oslo HTML master page because I wanted to create a publication. I added the Amazium framework to my solution. Next thing I had to do was add a reference to the Amazium CSS. And it actually breaks a lot of things in your SharePoint environment. So the final thing you'll have to do is fix what is broken by the use of your framework. So on that note. Yes, that should. Yes, we're seeing. Okay, before I dive into Visual Studio to show you the contents of my solution, I created 3 different HTML master pages. Demo1.html, it's basically just a copy of Oslo. The only thing I did was I hard-coded, and you never should do that of course, but I hard-coded in the master page my example grid that shows on the bottom, just to show you that my responsive UI starts to work. It doesn't, of course, in Demo 1 because there is no reference to the Amazium framework. The second master page, which is just a copy of Demo 1, the only thing I did was I added the Amazium framework reference to get it all working. From that point, you will see that it will actually start working, but you will see also that a couple of things are broken. And in my final HTML master page, which is a copy of Demo 2, I added the CSS fix to make it all work again. Okay, I'll walk you through the solution. It's a simple Sandbox solution. Again, I told you could, whoa, the resolution is not that great. Can you still see it? Still, yeah? I don't want to mess with my resolution again, so. It's a Sandbox solution. As said earlier, you could go with a design package. I choose to, because I'm only deploying internet artifacts, or internet artifacts in this case, I choose a SharePoint solution, Sandbox solution. Although it's deprecated, but I don't think the app model really fits the deployment of master pages. That's kind of like the bottom line. Apps are for end users, and this kind of stuff I feel are still targeted at administrator or system-wide things. I only have a couple of modules, demo data and images. Nothing really fancy there. Those are the images I use in my demo. I do, however, have mentioned 3 different HTML master pages. We will look at them shortly. And I was one step ahead of my demo and already added the Amazium CSS framework. Amazium consists of 3 files: base, Amazium, and layout, 3 CSS files. There's also a demo CSS, this one. That's actually the SharePoint fix that's in there to make it all work again. So let's open up this one. This is actually just a copy of the Oslo HTML. The only thing I added was, it's down here, is my example grid. It uses classes that are not known yet to SharePoint, so this won't do anything. We will see it in a minute, but it will just mess up my, there will be no grid. But that's the only thing I actually did. The second master page actually has the CSS needed for Amazium to work. It's the 3 files I mentioned. We can quickly look at them. It starts with the base. This is actually just the, almost every framework works like this. It's just the browser reset, so everyone starts at the same level. This is the one that really messes up SharePoint. This is the one you'll have to fix, but you cannot live without it. So every framework uses some kind of reset, of course. Then we have the actual Amazium CSS, and those are all the CSS pre-baked classes I use to lay out my cosmetic or my my page, my cosmetics on my page. And finally, we have a pretty empty CSS file which contains, in this case, only my example grid. But this is the one you could use for setting up your own branding solution. And I think, yes. And oh yeah, there's one other thing we did. We just added the full initial scale meta tag, so make sure it's not zooming in, zooming out on first use. And the only thing that differs from the second master page and the third one is that I put in a lot of work in fixing those issues. I did it together with a friend. We run a project which is called Amazium for SharePoint, and we try to fix all this CSS. It is on Coplex, so you could have a look at that. And if you look at this file, there's a lot in there. So this file really fixes everything that breaks, and I will show you in a minute what breaks. But we did most of the hard work for you. There's one for Twitter Bootstrap, made by Eric Overfield. Very good. Look at that one. Okay, since it's a, I will just deploy this Sandbox solution. I don't have to wait so that long, so I will just deploy it. We don't have to wait for an iOS reset, but it's still adding the solution, activate features. Okay, yeah, good to go. Okay, this is just the Oslo HTML. I will switch to the other master page. Here you will have my 3 master pages. I included another one, Amazium SharePoint. It's the one we include in our Coplex package. I will share it to you. It has a little bit more, a little more work done on it, so it's a little bit further. Okay, moving to the first one. Well, as said, I don't think well, it's all floating left, so it's all stuck on the left side of the screen. You probably won't see it because it's behind the part of the curtain, but my complete grid is not working, of course, because the CSS classes I used are not known. Pretty obvious. But if I do switch to my second master page, we will actually see that my grid starts to work. This is because Amazium kicks in and it actually layouts are my different containers. We do, however, see 2 things that really break. We see the ribbon is broken, but pretty broken. But what you see immediately that you have some extra spacing on the top and you have a double scroll bar. So those are the issues we like to have fixed. There are more issues, but you actually see that it will start working. So it kind of works with quirks. It works with quirks. Okay, well, this is not the most spectacular result, but because of the demo CSS file we included, we fixed most of this. I usually like to use Firefox for this because they included something like a responsive design view. I'll have to reset this baby. Yeah. And you will actually see that my well, all of SharePoint is now responsive. What's available currently, in my view. If you go a little bit further, I also included, as I told you, the amazing SharePoint master page. This one builds on what we already saw, just goes one step further and just adds some cosmetic elements. And this actually works and is responsive, so that's how you would do that. Just from a single HTML code base. Okay. Let's see if this works. Almost. Almost. Let's see how can I get this one. Ooh. Okay. Still something messed up. Let me check. I don't want to end my slideshow. Okay. Oh, there it is. Of course, I could do it like this. That should work. You will see. Yeah. Since we rely heavily on HTML, CSS, or responsive design, we benefit from decoupling the HTML and application logic. So I'm going to try to explain why I'm a big fan of dynamic HTML. It allows us to create rich and responsive user interfaces while keeping maintainable code. One of the ways to do this is through the use of JavaScript frameworks. So what does those frameworks have to offer? There are many types of frameworks. AngularJS is a very popular one. I've been working with Knockout for a couple of years, so that's my favorite. So I'll just mention those two, but there are a couple more. Declarative bindings are a simple way to connect your parts of the user interface to your data or your data model. So that's what that does. So instead of relying on your application logic to render the HTML, it's actually with data binding that you bring those two worlds together. So that really endorses your reuse of your JavaScript libraries because of it contains no HTML markup. You get things like dependency tracking. It takes care of actually updating the UI if your data or your data model changes. And it supports and promotes the use of design patterns. AngularJS kind of works with MVC or pushes you towards MVC. And Knockout people tend to go with MVVM style, model view model style programming. Although it's not obligated, but it encourages that. Another demo, dynamic HTML. So I will build a simple SharePoint app to display images from a list, which is actually just a picture library local to my application. I will build two versions, one without the dynamic HTML and one version based on Knockout. They will have the same functionality, same solution structure, same result. But I take a different approach. And what result would that be? Well, it's a very impressive app. It just shows an unordered list of 3 images. Those images come from a local image list called ImageList. It's local to my app, so I will deploy it at my app. And I will use plain REST to get, in this case, the encoded absolute URL for my images to, in version 1, construct my HTML, and in version 2, to data bind it. So 2 versions. One will have HTML directly from the app, no special patterns, although that's not that important. But version 2 will be HTML bound by Knockout and will be based on MVVM. The steps I had to take, we add Knockout.js to our solution. I already did that, but the easiest way is to use the package manager in Visual Studio with install package. It will deploy to the right location in your project structure. The next thing we have to do is we add a reference to Knockout to our page. The important part is we have to set up our HTML structure. That's actually our view. That will be done in our default in ASPX. So it will not be in our application logic. It will be done in our default ASPX. Big thing, we have to create our view model, of course, that actually connects those two. And we have to apply the binding. Have someone been using Knockout? Yeah, a couple hands. So for you guys, nothing new, I'm afraid. Well, maybe, but I guess not. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Not entirely. Now it is. Yeah. Okay. Let's close this one. I use a local installation of Team Foundation server, so I'll actually have to get the latest version. I did have a my demo working on Visual Studio Online, visualstudio.com, but I actually removed it because the performance was very horrible last night. So I figured something was wrong and I deployed it locally. So that's why I'm not running it from the cloud. It's always nice to have a local Team Foundation server instance at hand. Okay, there it is. I'll quickly walk you through the contents of this simple app. First thing we have a look at is the default. We have to wait a minute. Yep, there it is. This is basically the same default.aspx file that comes when you first create your SharePoint hosted project. So this is a SharePoint hosted project. So it's basically just the same file. It has the app ready call on document ready, and it actually has the container where usually a message gets inserted. So this is actually all the same file, exactly the same file. I deploy a local image list and some demo data. Those are the three images I like to show. And this one is not default, of course. This one is the one I use to create my ordered image list. So first I have a helper function just to get the app web URL. I need that because my load function, which is on the next line, accepts that variable, and I will use that, of course, to get to my app web, to my list, and I will just get the encoded absolute URL. If you look at the onSuccess handler, this is where I actually construct my unordered list. So this is where my HTML markup is within my app.js file. So this is not decoupled yet. This is version 1. So this is actually just a very basic way of creating that unordered list. So I set it a bit more academic with a namespace and use strict and used helper functions, but basically you can live without. Of course, they're just simple functions. Okay, let's see if the demo guides are in my favor. They are now. Okay, so nothing really special. As I told you, just 3 images, unordered list. But now we're going to move this to a knockout solution and see how that works. I did it in a separate solution just to make sure it's an exact copy of the original one. The only thing I added was some placeholders so I don't mess up my code snippets. So, okay, it said it was checked out, but luckily for me it isn't. There it is. Yep. Okay, so we basically get the same project structure, same image data or demo data. Here is where it's going to differ. This is the same file. I just added some of the placeholders for the code. The only thing I did up front was add knockout, and this is actually the minified version. They don't use .min in the file name, which is kind of awkward, I guess, but they do have a debug version, which is the non-minified version. I don't know why they like to be different, I guess. Not that important. So, gonna stick for easy access. So the first thing, if you remember what we had to do, was add a script reference to knockout. It's in our script, so this one is pretty easy. Just add it. And the next thing we had to do was set up our HTML structure. So in this case, you will see that I actually have my HTML where it belongs. It belongs in the default.aspx, not in my app logic. So that's why I liked Knockout a couple of years ago when they started Well, when apps came around with SharePoint 2013, I immediately thought of those two together, and that's why, mainly because of this. You'll see a curly bracket at the data bind, of course. It's an attribute Knockout picks up, so it's not strict XHTML, so that's why there is a curly bracket. But Knockout will fix this for us. And the next thing we have to do, of course, is yeah, this is just a object. Well, it's a JavaScript function. I use the getter and setter just to set the encoded absolute image URL because I need it to create my a view later on to fill my view. So that's why it's up there. The next big thing is I have. Oh, okay, that's okay. You can see the difference. Okay, I'll do it like this so you'll see. Yeah, that will work. Yeah. I changed my images function to images view model. That's just cosmetics. I like to differ those two so it's easily recognizable. I added a couple of things. KO is shorthand for knockout, so that's why it says items is ko.observable array. Observable array is Knockout's way of being able to detect when my model changes, and it enables the update of the UI. Because I use an array of items, it's called an observable array. And I have a function which is get items, and if you remember, and we take a look at this, this is where the Knockout data binding combines those two. So that's that function. The thing that, of course, really differs is success handler. And I will leave this one up there so you can see the difference. I don't need to construct the HTML in my app logic because I'm using Knockout and I decouple those two. So what I actually will do, I just will get and push my set and get and push my encoded absolute URL from my image. So that's what I will do. And on my kind of public interface, it is JavaScript, but I still like to do it like this. This is just my way of it. A lot of people do it like this, but I like to use privates and publics, but it's kind of a final thing, of course, we have to do, and this one changes. Instead of calling images.load, I will now call images viewModel.load. I followed with apply bindings, and that actually takes, if you want, an element, and it will find this ID, this container, and start the data binding within that. So I think we should be all set for this. Yeah. So this is not that spectacular. It's basically the same. Well, what happens behind the screens is pretty spectacular, of course, but the end result is still the same. So I like to spice it up just a little bit to show you more about the dynamic character of Knockout. So I will add just one more thing. What I'm going to do, I'm going to add a button, or in this case a link. I don't use a button because I don't want to post back and I have to work on that. So I just use a link because I want to show the dynamic character of Knockout, and it will just remove the first item. So that's why it will call a remove first. Again, data bind, it should be within my results container because that's what my apply bindings will look at. So it will pick up on this hyperlink too and make all everything work, everything come together. And to be able to do this, of course, I would need to expose that. This is okay. Ah, yeah. Okay. One other thing, of course, I need to expose it on the, I think it was remove first, yeah. Okay. I think this should work right away. Yeah, so I got a link and everything works fine. Then we'll see that it actually removes the first item. It does so, of course, without the need to post back. So what it doesn't do is it doesn't write it back. So if you do want that, you'll have to handle like a button and write your changes back to your list, of course, because you're removing items. But if I just refresh this page, of course, the images are still there. So you have to take care of that part too. So that's what Knockout can do for you. All right. And again, I think my default monitor is on the wrong one. Okay. Solution lifecycle management. I will only touch this subject just to make sure that, well, it's a big subject, so I just want to get you interested enough to do some research yourself. This is a typical product lifecycle. On the x-axis we have the sales, and on the y-axis we have the time. The y-axis could represent the product sales, or in case of a free marketing product, the popularity of your product. So right at the start, your product enters the market after hours and hours of, well, days of development and hard work. You enter the market, sales starts to pick up, and well, you even might release a new version and upgrade, but eventually the interest in your product will probably drop, and in the long run you probably will see that your product disappears from the ecosystem, so it gets end of life. Solution lifecycle management or application lifecycle management focuses on this process. So one of the things it does, it focuses on an earlier RTM. So the sooner your product's on the market, the more revenue you can make. So that's what this first arrow is. The second arrow is it focuses on maximizing sales. And for this, you need a good, solid product. You need a high quality product. The level of quality is, of course, determined by us. But in general, you need a good quality product to get enough sales. But this is where sustainability kicks in. So the longer your product stays on the market, the longer, how much you can extend its life actually determines how much revenue you will make with your product. So this is the definition the Microsoft Application Lifecycle Management or Team Foundation Server program group has for ALM. It's the continuous process of managing the life of an application. Merits of business, software engineering, that's us, by tools that facilitate and integrate coding, testing, tracking, and release management. Let's see how this relates to modern apps. Well, modern apps require a modern life cycle. So if you look from right to left, you'll see early RTM, maximize sales, and extend life. And how does this relate to ALM terms? It means continuous delivery, continuous quality, and continuous feedback. All part of what Microsoft recognizes as continuous improvement. So this concept really fits our SharePoint app model. Apps have a modern life cycle with continuous improvements at their center. Continuous feedback by store feedback and ratings. So getting your app from the store, you're actually encouraged to rate it and endorse it and give feedback. Focus on quality. If you have a bad review in the store, it can really hurt your sales. So that's why we focus on quality. And we need a high update frequency. Users usually don't care about version of apps. They just care about the amount of new features that get introduced with every new release. So that's why we need a high update frequency. So in my opinion, these are the minimal requirements for correct application lifecycle management. You need some form of version control. If you mess up your versions, you will get low quality software. You have to know which version is out there, which version is published to the cloud. You cannot do version control from a desktop folder. Remember those ugly folders where you would have one folder on the desktop say v1, new, do not use, latest version, even directory names with file dates in them. So you need some form of version control. Change management, you need to take care of your changes, of course. If you mess this up and you release the wrong product to the store, you will get bad reviews. Those reviews you need to manage. That's what feedback management is all about. And of course, to keep the quality up, you need quality management by things like automated usage, unit tests, or even custom build tasks that use SPCAF or things like that to make sure your software works correctly. And you need some kind of form of delivery management. You need to know what's out there. So this is borrowed from the ALM product group, and this is actually what the Team Foundation Server product has in store for us. All those little pieces, all those tools are available to us. Things like feedback management, continuous integration, load testing. So that's why I encourage you to look at this product. There's also a Visual Studio Online version, which adds another additional layer on top, which takes care of all those ALM options in Azure and stuff. You get even a build servers in the cloud. So, and the thing is, there's no real reason why you shouldn't use this software from Microsoft at the time, because Microsoft Cloud offering Visual Studio Online comes in 2 versions, Basic and Pro. The Basic version up to 5 users, you can use it for free. There's also a paid subscription, of course. This is today. This might change. There is an on-premise version, kind of like the SharePoint way of doing this. There is an on-premise version which is called Team Foundation Server Express. Again, free up until 5 users. I don't know how much longer that product will be around, because it's again an on-premise version, and Microsoft likes us to work with cloud version. So they're already seeing features that get introduced in Visual Studio Online that get not introduced in the on-premise version. So I think that might be the same route that our beloved project is heading. And they do have a paid on-premise version, which is called Team Foundation Server, and it has just a basic server and call licensing. So that concludes my presentation. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have questions, you can shoot at me now or later, if you want.
You chose the medium. Does it have any advantages compared to Bootstrap or the Foundation?
Yeah, I think I first created a shortlist when I wanted to use a HTML framework. I think I found about 10 or 20 that were pretty well accepted. Bootstrap is way up there. The reason I chose Amazium because it's pretty lean. It doesn't come with all the cosmetic stuff like buttons and rounded corners. It just provides fonts, and it provides those support classes, so the CSS classes. Bootstrap kind of you can trim it down, Bootstrap of course, and get a basic version, but it kind of pushes you towards the complete package. And I just like to use something different basically, but it's a lean framework, Amazium. It has been around for a couple of years. A skeleton is also a big one, also very good. Yeah, also, yeah. The approach you will get with those, or that you would take with those, are basically the same. Just they all break SharePoint because of the CSS reset, and you have to start fixing. Actually, the one that Eric Overfield has on Codeplex is the Twitter for SharePoint, Bootstrap for SharePoint. Oh yeah, he has both. Yeah. I think the Bootstrap even breaks more because he has so many things to correct. So even more than, well, this was also not a pretty one to fix. So.
What's your take on this?
Yeah, because of the whole bring your own device concept, I do expect. Well, I see it happening with my internet solutions that people actually access my internet solution using mobile devices. So they're running around with Surfaces and iPads. Yeah, I do have customers running around with Surfaces. Not that many, but they're out there. But what you probably see, we still have to figure something out for the collaboration part of your internet solution, because responsive design and document libraries with loads of columns don't go well together. So with Amazium for SharePoint, we're working with a we're trying to find a way around this by trying to modify the DOM and the HTML on the fly with JavaScript. So we take the regular team site with the regular master page and try to clean up as much. So yeah, we're going to drop columns, but maybe just keep the first one, make that responsive. But that's still work in progress. So that's a lot of work, yeah, and it's very daunting because you need probably a lot of information if you're in the internet collaboration part of your solution, and it's hard to fit that on a small screen. So, but most of my customers just wanted to work on an iPad in a landscape view. So that sounds reasonable. Yeah, SharePoint does work, of course, on the iPad in that view, but maybe you want a more responsive version of that. But that's in the pretty near future. Yeah, at least for my project. Okay. Hmm? Yes. Yeah, well, we create responsive page layouts. That's what we do. So we're on a kind of like two tracks. One track is that we provide both responsive master pages and responsive page layouts, and also responsive components like apps that are responsive. The other thing is we try to figure out a way to update the DOM dynamically, just by taking the general output that SharePoint has and try to modify it and make that sort of as much as responsive as we can. So that's what we do. So I don't think there is any other way to have a higher level of reusability of your components. So unfortunately, yeah, yeah. Yeah, well, of course, the HTML output within your iframe, if you have it under control because it's your app, you can do something about it. But it's still that's why we choose the approach when we want to modify the dynamically, because you want to set the iframes with dynamically. But it's pretty tough because if you have a lot of browsers out there, and most browsers don't allow you to do anything on the DOM outside of your own iframe, of course. But you can do with HTML messaging, you can do stuff. That's how we resize our app parts now. So you can get kind of responsive. Yeah, 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 yeah. It is. Okay, I think it's about 5 o'clock. So any more, and otherwise I'll be at SharePoint. Sure.
You mentioned frameworks since your apps means more JavaScript.
Yeah.
You mentioned unit testing before.
Yeah.
Do you recommend any framework for unit testing?
No, I don't typically recommend any of the. Yeah, maybe someone else can answer if there are perforations. I don't know. Yeah, unit testing basically for me is automated unit tests using Team Foundation Server during the build. So I don't have any way of doing my JavaScript yet. So okay, okay. Yeah, there is work done in that area. So not my expertise. So okay. All right. Thank you all.